Hi, this is Craig, and welcome back to Cruising Off Duty. If you've been following the channel, you know I've been sailing this Xquisite X5, which is a 50-foot catamaran, from Cape Town, South Africa, across the South Atlantic, and we've just ended up in the island of Fernando de Noronha in Brazil. Unfortunately, we're losing our most experienced catamaran sailor, Steve May. Him and his wife lived on a catamaran for 7 years, so before he leaves, I wanted to get an interview of him to get his impressions of this boat after we've finished sailing 4,000 nautical miles on it. Who better to say what's good and bad about a catamaran than a guy that knows how to live on one full time? It's a really detailed interview. Hopefully you're interested in that sort of thing. If you're looking for the story of us sailing, you can skip this episode, but if you're interested in buying a catamaran in the near future, you're probably going to get a lot out of this. So stay tuned.
Weigh anchor and hoist the sail.
Okay, welcome back to Cruising Off Duty. If you've been watching the channel, you've seen this gentleman before. We have done a 4,000 nautical mile sailing voyage so far from Cape Town, South Africa. We stopped in Namibia. We stopped in St. Helena. Now we're in Fernando de Noronha. I've said that hopefully right. In a Brazilian island at the north end of Brazil on the way to the Caribbean. This gentleman you've seen in previous episodes, but if this is the first episode you've seen, why don't you introduce yourself to the channel and tell us a little bit about your sailing experience and what type of sailboats you've had in the past.
Okay. My name is Steve May, and over a 10-year period, my wife and I sailed a Farrier 43 performance catamaran from San Francisco, California to Mexico, across the South Pacific, Australia, Papua New Guinea, up into Micronesia, and then multiple visits through and in and around Indonesia. Ultimately, we sailed to Thailand, where we sold the boat about 2 years ago. Yeah, and this is the best example of our crew. He has the most catamaran sailing experience, obviously, by far. I've only ever charted in BVI. Neil, who you'll meet later, is an Oyster monohull owner, and Sean, who bought this boat, was previously a power boater, I believe. Right. So you are the guru on the crew of all things catamaran, having spent 7 years sailing and living on a catamaran. So we always deferred to him for everything that was catamaran knowledge, and we're going to miss you. I don't know if I mentioned that yet. You're flying out from here. That's the reason we stopped in this island. So we're going to be losing him. We're going to get another crew member on. Right. But I definitely wanted to pick your brain first about your experience sailing this cat. After coming from a more performance cat, I would definitely classify this Xquisite X5 as a more cruising catamaran. And it's a luxury cruising catamaran. It's got every bell and whistle, and that's great. But we'll talk about its weight, because there's always a pro and con to everything, right? So performance is all about lightness and speed. This one's built more for comfort. And now you've had 4,000 miles of sailing it, so you can definitely be the best person to say pros and cons of each type of catamaran. So you coming from a performance cat, why don't you talk about your expectations of what this would be sailing across the South Atlantic on this type of catamaran? So, the Xquisite attracted my wife and I because of, I'm sure that some of your viewers have seen some of the walkthroughs of this boat, and it's an extraordinary yacht. And the build quality, the systems installation, all of that attracted us, but also as we are actually shopping for our next boat as well, we really wanted to understand, is this the right boat for us? And one of the things that actually attracted us is that it is a little bit heavier, a little bit more solid than of a ride than the boat that we had. Because one of the benefits of a go-fast catamaran that everybody talks about, oh, we want to do 200-mile days and we want dagger boards and we want to go zooming around in our catamaran. But when you're actually doing 24-hour passages with you and your wife, or a limited crew, it can be very tiring to be on a boat that is that lightweight. Our catamaran weighed 14,000 pounds.
Important to mention,
That's probably a third of the weight of this vessel. Or less. And you really feel every ripple. Now, that sword cuts both ways, right? Because on the one hand, you can see a puff of wind coming across the water.
And you feel the boat move.
And you feel it. And that's a feeling that I really enjoy and appreciate. But it also, you could almost describe a performance boat in a way as tender, because it's going to be, you're going to feel the subtleties, you're going to feel every wave and every puff of wind. In another way, I would say a sort of the negative side of the ledger of a performance cat is that you can also get overpowered more easily, or things can you can find yourself where you have more sail up than the situation warrants, and the boat is going to feel that much more than a more solid, heavier ride.
Right.
And specifically, I think a boat like this, if the wind is blowing 20 knots and you don't have a reef in your mainsail,
Yeah.
and then the wind jumps up to 30 knots in this boat, you're going to feel the boat heat up. It's going to speed up. You're going to definitely feel that, but you're not overpowering the boat in a way where you're actually kind of at that red line where you could potentially, depending on the yacht, actually capsize that boat.
Right.
Whereas our boat, if you were in 20 knots of breeze with your full mainsail and a big head sail, and it went to 30 knots, you actually had a situation that you needed to manage immediately.
Because you could flip your boat.
Because you could actually capsize that boat. And so I think as you hear discussions online about people who are choosing their next boat, they're oftentimes, we want dagger boards, we don't want dagger boards. We want performance, we don't want performance. And I think it's important for people to take any opportunity to get out on the water, spend time on that type of boat in a real seaway, not in a bay.
Yeah.
But for example, on the way from Namibia to here, we had some boisterous conditions where we had very high 20s consistently, 28 knots of breeze for hours and hours and days and days. And 15-foot seas, boisterous seas.
And we had times where the swell was coming from one direction, but the wind at that time was coming from a different. So you get the confused sea where the swells are hitting you from your side of your boat, but the wind is coming from the back of your boat. So you're getting this whole...
Or multiple swell directions.
Yeah, so it's all over the place.
And so how does the boat feel in real world conditions? If there's any way for a person... And that's one of the reasons I'm on this trip. I want to know, how does this boat feel in a real seaway?
Right.
And I think the people who are going to spend time watching this video want to know the answer to that question as well.
And that's the number one question I get, because a lot of people who watch this channel know Janice and I do a ton of walkthroughs at shows of boats, catamarans only, but at docks. And we go, oh, isn't this a beautiful salon? Isn't this a beautiful cabin? Great. And if I get one criticism, it's great. It looks good on the dock, or it looks good at an anchorage.
Yeah.
How does it sail? And I've always been like, I don't know. And, people would sometimes comment, which I didn't know if I could believe or disbelieve, that boat doesn't sail well, or that boat sails way better than that boat. And I'm at a dock going, I don't know. Has this person got an axe to grind against that, or they've got a dog in that fight sort of thing?
Right.
So you don't, I would never know. Now Tomas took me out on a test sail after the Annapolis show, but it was so calm that day. It wasn't even a good example, right? But I got to say, I went sailing on it. This was my opportunity to really say, we're going to get all conditions.
Yes.
I mean, I'm going to be on this boat for 8 weeks. All told, by the time we get to Grenada. And clearly we've gone through squalls, we've gone through all sorts of crazy conditions, and I'll definitely be able to say by the end of this, I know this. But I don't have a lot of catamaran previous experience. So to compare, like, I might go, this boat sails amazing, and you might go, I mean, like, that's why I wanted your input on it, especially coming from the flip side of the coin, which is yours was a go fast cat, and this is definitely a comfort cat, or a cruising cat, right? It's not going to break any land or water speed records, but you're going to feel comfortable, at least from my opinion, you're going to feel comfortable while you cross. Now, how did you find the path? Knowing this was a heavier boat. Now, this boat's about fully loaded with all the water and tanks. It's about 56,000 pounds.
It's over 50,000 pounds once you put all the fuel and all the water and all the cruising gear and everything.
And you're coming from a 14,000 pound totally loaded boat.
Yes.
So
completely
different feel. Now, how did you, knowing that you were getting on a much more cruising based catamaran, did it kind of meet your expectations and exceed, or were you like, it's about what I expected?
Yeah. I would say in terms of, did it meet my expectations? I think I had a pretty good idea how the boat was going to perform.
Right.
I think it exceeded my expectations in sailing speed. I think it sailed faster than I thought it would sail.
Right.
In open water crossings where you're doing, 1,000 miles, 2,000 mile crossings, you hope that most of that is done downwind. And so even if your boat, like my old boat would sail, very, very fast on a beam reach, at the end of the day, a lot of the miles you're doing are dead downwind, or close to a very deep downwind angle. And so I think an important question is, how does the boat behave in those conditions? This boat has a really nice sail plan in that it has 2 head sails. It has a very big screecher, which is sort of a large Genoa style sail, and then that sail can be reefed or you can switch down to a small jib.
Yeah.
And those sails are on a fixed furling drum, which means regardless of what happens with the wind conditions, if it's 15 knots and a squall comes through and all of a sudden that turns to 30 knots, you're in a position where literally at a push of a button, you're going to roll that. You're rolling that sail up. Nobody's going on deck.
Yeah.
You're not having to wake up the off watch to manage that sail plan, and to a degree, you're not even having to anticipate the wind change as much as you would on a performance-based catamaran.
Talking about that tippiness. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're in, if our old boat, if you were flying a large head sail, and situation changed dramatically like that, where the wind speed doubled.
Yeah.
Which means that the pressure of that wind probably quadrupled or more.
Yeah.
You better be out in front of that, managing the sail plan before the wind gets there.
Right.
Whereas I think on our way into this island, we saw 32 knots of wind.
Yeah, we had some squalls
and rain squalls going by.
And we weren't really too concerned.
We never reefed our heads. We did not have a mainsail. We were going dead down with our. We had taken our Spinnaker down the day before, and we had our big head sail out, and we just ran with it. We thought about, should we roll this up a little bit, and there was no need, and the boat was making good speed. And
the sail and the boat could easily handle the 30 knots of wind, especially when you're going downwind, because your apparent wind is less.
Right, because that's reducing the actual wind speed.
The boat would speed up, so the apparent wind didn't go up as much as you would think.
What did we see apparent wind-wise?
The highest I saw apparent wind was 20-something, 20, 22 maybe.
Yeah.
And going downwind, like I said, the Screecher can easily handle that. So
yeah. So one of the things, back to your question about my expectations, I think that a person who's considering a boat like this should take into account that, okay, maybe the boat isn't as light and nimble and responsive, and that might be a good thing.
Yeah.
Because do you want to be light, nimble, and responsive at 2 in the morning
when your wife's on watch,
somewhere between St. Helena and Brazil, when the wind turns from 20 to 30 knots? You know, and so I think there's a certain security in the way that this boat behaves, predictability, and ability to sort of absorb some of the changes in wind direction and speed, and that are confidence inducing, and would really make my wife and I feel that sense of confidence in the boat, that regardless of, I mean, I think you probably feel that too. By the time we got here, you're like, hey, whatever weather is going to come, we're fine. Good shape.
Yeah, for sure. And we're talking about that. A lot of people who are watching the channel, it's maybe a cruising couple, and they're like, "Can we sail this alone?" And even if you are like a super, I like speed, I like performance, but your wife might be a little more, I like comfort. And you even talked about that in the passage with me. Sometimes when it was a bit too much, your wife would go, "Can we change angle to the wind to make this less bouncy?" Because if you're getting waves from the side, it turns into a bit of you feel like you're in a washing machine on the oscillating cycle, right? So so sometimes you go, "Yeah, honey, I can go more downwind instead of more beam reach. We'll go a little bit out of our way, but if it makes you comfortable while you're trying to cook dinner or whatever it is, you can do that." A heavier boat probably don't need to do that as much, right? Because it's not bouncing around quite as much. With a very light boat, you're feeling every wave, and this boat's kind of so heavy that a wave comes in, we move a little, not crazy amounts, right? Not flying around inside. So that was nice. You could sleep better, and no matter what the experience level of the crew members was, the rest of the crew could kind of say, even if it goes from, because we had predict winds, so sometimes it would say gusts might get up to 30, and sometimes you have to say, okay, well, that's what predict wind says. Let's add another 5, or add another 10. Worst case scenario goes to 35. Can the sail plan we've got while we're sleeping, and the most junior crew members on board, can we sleep? Or do we have to get up every time the wind picks up? On a performance cat, you might feel like the most experienced guy has to listen. And as soon as he hears the boat speeding up and the wind howling, whoop, got to get up. Right? Well, maybe on this boat you go, it's fine. So.
Yes. I would describe it as bulletproof.
Right.
Actually. Yeah. And I think I think for a lot of people it's going to be exactly what the doctor ordered for that couple to sail this boat, and that they're going to arrive rested, and the stress level that can happen when you're offshore and winds are changing and you don't quite know what's going to happen next. I think this boat would build confidence, and the couple or the cruisers are going to arrive rested and safely. Yeah,
there's not even a lot of exercising to be being done. Everything's electric winches, and you don't even have to crank anything manually. So you get there very rested, right?
Well, my wife and I, oftentimes we would arrive at an island, and we were actually younger at that point we were in our early 40s, and we were sort of on the youngish end of some of the cruisers we were hanging with. And we would get to an island after a 3-day or a 5-day passage in the South Pacific, and everybody would go attend an event or go tour the island, and we would go to sleep. And it's like,
why are we so tired?
Well, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
You know, and actually I realized in hindsight that it's because our boat was a lot more fatigued, because there was just so much more sound, so much more motion, and attending to the sails very regularly. Now, I happen to love that. I love sailing the boat.
A little bit more of adrenaline sailor.
And also I just enjoy tweaking the sails with, you know, wind shifts and just actively sailing.
Yeah, you make a game out of it more, as opposed to a lot of people just want to set and forget.
Set and forget.
Yeah. So that's, and like to say, there's different strokes for different folks. So you're talking about, you kind of mentioned that probably off camera, that there's two sides to the coin. There's more the performance people who love performance, and if they know that that's what they need because they've had previous performance boat, that's great.
Yes.
But don't just assume, if this is your first big catamaran purchase, I just want to know that I can go fast so I can brag to my buddies how fast I sailed.
Yeah.
But the reality of is a 200 plus 250 mile day can be very windy, very noisy, very bouncy, and not a very comfortable ride.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what I think we talked about, that where there's so much talk about the 200 mile day. Oh, does that boat do a 200 mile day?
Yeah.
And I think I said to you, has the person saying that ever done a 200 mile day?
Yeah.
Do they know how tiring it is or how loud it is?
Yeah.
And, you know, you could do half of a 200 mile day. How about 100 miles in 12 hours? Okay, that sounds great.
And then dial it back a bit.
Now it's nighttime.
Yeah.
Now we're cooking dinner.
Yeah.
And now somebody's trying to sleep.
Yeah.
And you're still hauling ass.
Yeah.
And, you know, can you sleep? And now we're going to do that for another day and another day and another day.
Like 12 days in a row or whatever, like we just did.
So, you know, and again, I'm the guy that would probably answer the question, yes, I probably do want to do that.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for people to understand what they're actually looking for in their boat, rather than saying, no, of course, who wouldn't want their boat to be go fast?
Yeah, wouldn't you want the best of both worlds? Super comfortable, and it goes like it's not, right?
But what you're really getting with a faster, lighter performance boat, you are also, that comes with some additional work.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's talk about the X5 in particular. That's the boat we're on, the Xquisite X5.
Yeah.
You, knowing the most about catamarans, have been in the engine room, looked under the desk at all the electronics installation. We went and did the factory tour together back in Cape Town, and I know I was super impressed. And I've talked off camera with you, and you are super, super impressed. And I take more from that than me being impressed. Me being impressed, like, I've never really gone under the cabinets and looked at the electrical of a boat, because I don't do that at Annapolis Boat Show when I'm doing a walk around randomly. I was super impressed, but you told me that knowing what you've experienced on looking at other boats more detailed than I did, because thinking of buying one, you've gone nuts and bolts into some of these boats.
Yeah.
And what do you think of the Xquisite and its installation of its like engine room, its electronics, its everything that goes onto this boat?
Yeah. So from my experience of looking, you know, my cruising experience plus actually shopping for our next boat, I don't think that there is another boat that comes anywhere close to the thoughtfulness that went on that went into the systems installation on this boat.
Yeah.
For the real life of living aboard a boat, the reality is that you are maintaining that boat.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to have to access many of the component parts that went into running that boat: the water pumps, the water maker, the hydraulic steering, the electronics, and even if you wish that wasn't true, unfortunately, you know, talk to anybody who's actually cruising, and they're spending, you know, a lot of time, not a lot of time, but you're spending time all the time maintaining the operations of the boat. And so to be on this boat and to get into the engine rooms and to see how thoughtfully they're laid out, how well labeled everything is, and problems that you would encounter have been anticipated and eliminated before you even have the problem. And so I can't say enough about how I think it's really an achievement that Tomas and his team have achieved with this boat. And I think that whoever ends up as an owner of this boat is going to, they may not even be able to appreciate the trouble and the pain and suffering that they have avoided because Tomas and his team have already taken that out of the equation for you. When we need to open a cupboard to access something behind it, it's very easy to remove, to get access to the plumbing or the electrical or the piece that needs attention, and then they're labeled and it's very thoughtfully done. Oh, we need to take this part out. Well, there's disconnects already added, so you just do a quick disconnect, pull the component out, and then the vendor maybe had like we had a problem with the water maker that had nothing to do with Thomas and his crew. It had to do with the vendor and the system itself. And it was so easy to maintain that, even in a Seaway. When we were working in the cupboard where the system is installed. And
you were working on the generator. We had a impeller fall apart. We were replacing that on the go while we were sailing, and we're bouncing around.
So, you know, the systems installation on this boat, I would just say from the point of view of an experienced cruiser, if you talk to anybody who's done any cruising, or if you are a person who has done any cruising, the reality is you're not on vacation. It's more of an expedition, and it's enjoyable, but you are maintaining that boat.
Things will go wrong at some point.
You
have to know where to find it, and when you open up a cabinet, I know my Beneteau, the wiring's a gong show. You open up thing and there's a wire, just a twist of wires going through. You have no idea which wire goes to which thing. And so when I saw the wiring, I just knew, wow, this is next level. Every wire's lined up perfectly. Everything's labeled. Everything's color coded. I mean, it was wow. And then the engine room, I didn't get in because you were so good at it. You would jump in, but I'd film you. And I'm like, look at all the space you have to work around the engine or the generator. Everything's labeled. You know, it's got its own oil change system built in. It's got so much stuff. And I'm like, even if you are kind of like me, and I'm not super mechanically inclined when it comes to diesel engines and all that stuff, but I could almost have somebody walk me through it by sending me an email. Go down there, open this thing, because I can find everything's labeled. So, I mean, I think for a prospective owner of a boat, and I think that's something to keep in mind. When you go to a different builder, you may find it's not that, like you say, they put a lot of time and effort in making sure everything lines up perfectly, everything's labeled, everything's color-coded. And that they didn't need to do that. They could have just thrown all the wires underneath and said, yeah, it's in there.
It reminds me a little bit about the story of Steve Jobs, who, if you know about Steve Jobs, who created Apple and the iPhone, and people picked on him or criticized him for requiring that even the components that no end user would ever see needed to be beautiful. They needed to be laid out, because the story is that his father had told him, when, you know, as a cabinet maker, even the part that gets put away that you will never see needs to be created with that level of attention to detail. And that's how I feel about this boat, is that even parts that you as an owner may never explore and may never have occasion to dig into have been put together with that high level of attention. And you know, I'm kind of going on about this, but I think, you know, I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't get anything.
Neither do I.
If somebody ends up choosing an X5, but I think one of the very strongest points of this boat is the quality of construction, the thoughtfulness of the systems to address real world live aboard cruisers.
And even if you're a type of person who says, look, I wouldn't do that stuff anyway, I'll pay somebody to do it, the guy you pay is probably going to charge you a lot less because the hours will be less. When he gets in there, he's going to know exactly where everything goes, end to end, and he'll be able to diagnose it, fix it quicker than if he gets in there and it's just a mess-up spin of wires and tubes and nothing's labeled. Okay, let's talk about the Xquisite X5. That's the boat that we're on, and what you thought of things that were on board that you liked, that kind of impressed you or was above what you expected. And then, no boat is perfect. Every boat has some issue where everybody can find something to nitpick. Things that you weren't maybe in love with the boat.
One thing that I think is I was not in love with was how you have to access the head of the mainsail, and you essentially have to climb mast steps to get to the head of the sail to put the sail, you know,
back in the bag.
Put it back in the bag.
Yeah, it's tough.
And you're pretty high up there when you're doing that. And I think that's true. I mean, again, across the similar type boats to this. I think it's true on the Lagoons and the Fontaine Peugeots and the privileges, and anything with the bridge deck steering is
the boom height would
the
be
boom
higher.
height is going to be higher.
But you're talking about even the track on the mast, what kind of stops high, right?
Well,
So
I
then
think
you
it's
have to
a function of how high the boom is,
Right.
and then the sail stacks on top of that.
Yeah.
And so you have to climb a portion of the mast to access that, and I wouldn't want to do that in a seaway when
bouncing
you're
around.
moving all over the place.
Yeah.
And having said that, we both know that I believe that is something that Tomas plans to address in future versions of this boat, where the boom actually would be lower than it is
to
now.
make it a little easier to access.
Yeah, and I think that would be.
I think even
an
for us,
improvement.
all of us, when we took our mainsail down the last time,
Yeah.
we kind of just left it loose.
Yeah.
We put it 95% of it is just sort of laying in the bag.
Yeah.
But the top 5-10% was still sticking out the top because
Yeah.
nobody in the bouncing seas wanted to get up there and push
Stick-
it down
and stick
into
it
the
away, yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we kind of left it there thinking, well, we'll
Yeah.
get it when it's calmer, but it never really got calmer until we got close to here, and then we put it away just before. So I know what we were talking about on that.
Yeah.
So I just want to explain to the viewer where you're talking about the mast or the sail getting into the sail
Yeah,
bag to
yeah.
zip it closed so that it's contained. Yeah.
Yes. And another criticism that is just unique to this particular boat, this is a very high-tech boat. There are a lot of sophisticated systems and technology on the boat, including a Glomex, what it is, it's like a Wi-Fi signal enhancer or a cell phone.
Antenna bulb
Yeah.
type thing.
And
Yeah.
I think the position of the mounting of that Glomex is risky.
It's right here above us, right? Isn't
Yeah.
it right here?
Yeah, I think it shouldn't be mounted there because I think there's too many of your sailing lines, your reefing lines when they're loose, your if you have a preventer rigged, and I think that it's just a matter of time, frankly, before something snags that thing and rips it off. And so a better location for that needs to be found.
Right.
And I don't think that's by no means a deal killer, but you don't
Yeah.
want to. You don't want
Just
to.
one of those things where you're like, that's
right?
awfully close to all those lines that kind of loosely
Yes.
flop by it, right? It's going to
Yes.
get caught on that at some point.
Yeah,
And at the worst possible time when it's 30 knots of wind and it's just going to get ripped off the roof probably.
absolutely. Yeah,
So that could easily be installed somewhere else on the boat.
I think
Just-
so.
Yeah. Okay. So things that you liked that were kind of, wow, I didn't even, I didn't know that I even wanted that, but now I do because it's on the
Yeah.
boat.
Yeah. Well, there's just so much to like about the
Yeah,
boat, frankly.
We've already gone on a lot, but
Yeah.
anything that you
I think the ergonomics are really good. I think the kitchen layout is amazing.
Mhm.
It's very functional, and you have space. We've got a lot of kitchen gadgets on board. We've got bread maker
Yeah.
and a griddle and an air fryer and
kettles and
all kinds of
crazy.
gear, and yet
There's lots of room.
there's still room to prepare nice meals. And the dishwasher, I gotta say,
Yes, I thought the same
I'm
thing.
not a dishwasher guy,
I know.
but it was pretty sweet having that dishwasher.
My wife and I say all the time, the one thing she says is a must is the clothes dryer,
Right.
which of course this does have a washing machine.
Yes.
And I said, yeah, I totally get it. I mean,
Yeah.
who wants to hand wash your clothes every day or
Right.
whatever? But dishwasher, we always said, that's a
Who
waste
needs
of
a
money.
dishwasher?
But man, when there's 4 of us eating and we've had a bouncy ride and we're all tired and we got different watches and some people are going to sleep, the
Yeah.
last thing you want to do is every time we eat is to sit there and scrub dishes, right?
Yeah.
And pots that we've cooked in and all that stuff. The dishwasher, I gotta
It's
say,
pretty sweet.
I don't know if I can afford it, but
I don't want to admit it
Yeah.
because I actually told that to my family and they were like, "What?
you want a
Steve wants
dishwasher?
a dishwasher?"
Yeah. So-
But I actually think it probably uses less water
yes,
than you would if you were washing those dishes.
for sure.
And they come out cleaner. So there's
Yeah.
okay. I did say
yeah.
that.
So I don't want Janice to see this either.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, but the again, the thoughtfulness of the salon layout, the couch is super comfy. That's something that I think could be improved. The television
Oh yes.
is
Yes.
at an angle where really only this portion of
One
the
side of the
room
couch can actually
it.
see the TV. Yeah.
And I think it's just an addition of an arm that allows you to pivot the
Right.
television that
Good
wouldn't
point.
solve that. But
I didn't even think of that till you said it. But
yeah. But anyway, ergonomics,
Yeah.
super functional, super comfy, and having lived on the boat, yeah.
One thing I know I liked, I'll tell my full opinion in a different episode, but one thing I saw that I would never, if somebody had that on a spec sheet, do you want to pay for that?
Yeah.
I'd be like, no. And we talked about it off camera. Having the camera, kind of like
the
the Verb or whatever it is, Garmin camera on the top of the mast looking
Yeah.
down so you can see coral heads if you're going into a harbor, or if you want to know if there's any chafe on your spinnaker halyard or all that, you just let out the line just a few inches, and your camera's looking down. It can see the line, and you can go, oh, no chafe, good enough, bring it back up. You don't have to take the whole sail down to see if there's any chafe in your line. I thought that was pretty sweet.
I would have considered that an absolute luxury,
not
kind
necessary.
of
gimmick,
right? And
it's clear and it's
useful.
color, and you can see
we were using it. It was a pretty cool thing for checking. I mean, we had a spinnaker run for 5.5
days, nonstop spinnaker run,
and we were able just to let the halyard out a little bit, get a view of it, and see if there was chafe happening.
And you can record the screen, so if you want to rewind it and look at it closer and stuff, you had the ability. I mean, I was impressed.
Plus, it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun to look at. I use some of the footage from my episodes where you can actually see the spinnaker expanding, but also you Nelson the spinnaker. You can get a visual of that from the top of the mast, which is so cool. So if somebody said that before this on a spec sheet, you're buying a boat, do you want to spend X number of dollars to have a camera at the top of your mast? I would have been like, no, why would I need that, right? I think totally worth it if it's not too much money, for sure.
One thing that I would think a person should consider is consider using a spinnaker. And I think there would be many people who'd be happy to sail without the spinnaker. But we really benefited from having that spinnaker, and I know your original thought was like, "Whoa, this is a lot of sail."
The parasail, the parasail.
But really, any spinnaker is going to feel like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know how many times we ended up deploying that. Maybe 8 times in all, maybe 10. And we haven't finished getting our system down yet. But by the time we did, I do think a couple could manage that.
Yeah.
By using a system so that they're not trying to manage all the loads, and somebody's not up there muscling the sail onto the deck or something like that. But the spinnaker was really a benefit on those downwind.
Oh, it's a must. But I don't have a spinnaker on my boat right now because I'm on Lake Ontario, and most of the time I'm not going a long, long way downwind. So I just throw my Genoa out and I'm done. Right? I don't even need a spinnaker because you're always changing angles to the wind constantly. So but on a long passage, if you're going to get a cruising catamaran and you're planning to cross oceans, you really, really can't, in my mind, go without a spinnaker. It's just you're going to go downwind. If you're going to do the trade wind kind of passages, you're going to be downwind more often than not. And you can get way more speed from light winds with a spinnaker than you can with your Genoa.
Yes.
On my first transatlantic from Las Palmas to St. Lucia, I think we spent 80% of our time with the spinnaker
on spinnaker,
And so I was like, wow, I don't own a spinnaker. I didn't know it was even that valuable a sail. But I was a believer after that passage. This one wasn't an asymmetrical spinnaker; it's a parasailer. And the first time we deployed it, there's extra lines, and it was just things were rubbing on rails, and things were. I was not in love with it. I said I'll go back to just a regular spinnaker. But once we realized we can treat it like a spinnaker, and we don't need 4 lines on the bottom. We can just live with the 2. And we can put it off to the side so it's not rubbing on the rails. And it just became our go-to sail whenever the wind was less than 20 knots, right? And we had it up in 25 at times. We were like, oh, well, boat's just going faster. It didn't seem to have a problem with it.
No, it was very
Tomas
happy.
says it can do 20 knots apparent, and when you're going downwind, we never got above 20 knots apparent. But if we ever got a forecast that was even close to that, though, especially when it was going to get dark, we pulled it in. The only time we left it up at night, we did 5.5 days in a row, was when we saw the forecast was maybe 15 knots overnight. We're like, okay, so worst case scenario, it's 5 more than that. It's 20. And then we're going downwind, so the apparent would be less. Then we left it up. But yeah, so I highly suggest a spinnaker or something like a parasailer is a
nice tool to have in your bag.
You gotta have it. If you're going to go downwind a lot, you gotta have it, right? So
different strokes for different folks. For some, I know couples who have sailed around the world twice without a spinnaker on white sails only, no mainsail. I met a couple that was on their second circumnavigation and hadn't taken their mainsail out of the bag since they left South Africa, and they were in the Pacific. So
you can totally do it. I do that on my boat now. You just sail slower in light winds. So if you're going downwind with your Genoa out, you just don't go as fast. Right?
Exactly.
And occasionally your Genoa will collapse and then open and then collapse and open. In which case you just decide, do we want to keep doing that, or do you want to just take the sail down and relax, have a beverage, right? So yeah, it is good. Okay, so a couple of things I just want to make sure we talk about here. Anything you would change? There's nothing really you would change on the boat. The way it's laid. Oh, you wanted to talk about this boat is geared towards a certain type of client, certain type of, and it seems to tick all the boxes.
I feel like this boat clearly is targeting a cruising couple.
Yeah, and
it's luxurious. It is a very luxurious boat, but don't let the luxury put you off. It's a proper sailboat.
Right.
It is
Blue water sailboat,
robustly built. It's safely built and incredibly well put together. It's not a performance catamaran.
Right.
And if you think you want a performance catamaran and you're a person who actually knows what that means, and then this boat is not targeting you as a customer. And so, but I think for the customer that it is targeting, it just hits the sweet spot.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about what would the other boats that a person would be looking at. Obviously, the big three: the Lagoon, the Leopard, the Fontaine-Peugeot, but then numerous other brands that are sort of trying to do the same thing would be Privilege, the Discovery, the maybe the Antares, although I don't know if they're a 44-footer. So, but I can't imagine a boat as well made for the same money and as well equipped for the same money than another boat in its class.
I agree totally. It's good. Actually, even though it's out of my price range, it's amazing bang for the buck. If you have the capital that you can afford a boat like this, you should
be looking at this boat.
Yeah, you should be. If you can afford it, you should look at this boat for sure.
Absolutely.
And like I said, neither one of us have any stake in this game. It's just we've been super impressed.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I also wanted to mention, and we've talked about this off camera, is the feeling of you're not just a number. It feels like you're part of a family when you buy it, and the after sales service that we've received from the time we left Cape Town, the constant ability to email the crew at Phoenix and stuff that build it and say, look, we have an issue with our water maker. They didn't build the water maker.
Right.
And they're like, hold on, we'll get on this. We'll figure out what parts you may or may not need, whether it's the membrane, whether it's this. They took control of it. Same with their generator. It ended up being an impeller, which is a simple fix. But they were like on it, not only by email, but they actually flew. Well, the original plan was already, because the first one was considered a test sail. They'd already agreed to send a crew to Namibia, our first stop, to do a little okay, now that you've properly test sailed it for the first 800 miles,
shake
let's
it
just
out.
tweak it, make sure everything's still tight, everything's still good, and that was fine. And that was when our water maker was already having an issue, and they went to town on the water maker, and we got that situation solved. We didn't have the generator problem yet. That was on the way to St. Helena, and they flew Rudolph, the lead designer, out to meet us with parts in his carry-on luggage to just fix our boat. And I mean, you're just not good. And they have all these things that when we get multiple, I know Tomasa said, when we get 3 Xquisites at the same island at the same time, we're going to throw a huge party. And the constant contact, and that feels more like a family run. You feel like you're part of the family when you buy a boat, not, I just assume when you buy a Lagoon or a Leopard, they build hundreds and hundreds of boats a year. They can't be giving you that kid glove feel like the family type of feeling when you're buying a mass production boat like you would. So you're not paying a lot. You're not. We already said good bang for the buck, but you're getting so much extra after sales service that I don't think you're going to get from any builder or any builders. Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, I think we sound like a commercial for Xquisite, which is, and we I think both of us. We don't want to sound like
trying to find fault,
like we have some kind of bias or but the reality is that this has been an exceptional experience from a service point of view. And I heard Tomas, I actually watched your video where Tomas was giving his dog and pony show about his yacht, and I was like, blah 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 blah,
of course he's going to say it's great.
Of course he's going to say that. He's the owner of this company, and yes, they're going to provide all this service. Sure you are. But then, on my own boat, I had a problem with my water maker. And when I was in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, I was the guy sending emails through the satellite phone to the water maker company, and they were giving me instructions. It took 48 hours to troubleshoot because the instructions were complex, and we were in a seaway. There was a lot of motion, and it was challenging to perform the tests that they wanted me to perform to troubleshoot the issue and finally solve my water maker problem when I was 1,500 miles offshore.
Right.
Fast forward, we're on our way from Namibia to St. Helena. We had an issue with the water maker that we all agreed with Tomas and his crew plus us that we agreed it was resolved. We got a couple of days offshore, and it turns out it was not resolved, and we were not able to make water. And I just instinctively said, do you want me to contact the watermaker vendor?
Yeah.
And Tomas texted back and said, no, we are in touch with their top people. We are solving this problem for you.
Yeah.
And they ended up giving us the troubleshooting directions to implement while we were offshore. I later learned that the vendor had actually requested a battery of different tests we were supposed to run that would have included spending a lot of time in this forward locker in a seaway, with beakers and measuring and timing this and that while you're trying to establish different pressures and things. We knew none of that. All we knew is that they asked us to do one simple test that clearly answered the question of what the problem was. And then the thing that blew my mind is they're like, then we're flying to St. Helena, which only has flights in once a week and out once a week, right?
Yeah.
So you
got stuck there for a week.
And you got the head designer flying into a remote location and spending a couple of days. And while he was here, he also said, well, I'm bringing a toolkit and I'm going to tighten and fix and check and go over the boat. And so I think this is an experience. The person who buys this boat is going to have an experience unlike any other boat builder that I'm aware of.
Right.
They are going to be part of a community, a part of a conversation. They're going to be a phone call or a text on a satellite phone away from the top people who are going to immediately troubleshoot and interact with the vendor instead of what happens in every other situation that I'm aware of. You, the boat owner, are the one that is contacting the refrigeration guy, the generator guy, the Yanmar engine guy, the prop guy, the whatever the issue is. You're the one who's trying to figure it out, and you're not talking to the top guy. You're talking to whatever regional service department is maybe capable and maybe less capable. And so I think that's something that people should weigh again when they're making a determination for essentially the same price as the other guy. You get a package that includes this after-sales service that is absolutely unparalleled. Yeah. And it actually makes me believe the claim that Tomas made and what he's aiming at with his company, which is to maintain the value of these boats, because they're actually maintaining the fleet and tracking the maintenance on the fleet and even providing it. And it makes me think that they're going to achieve that, and that is a very it's a big plus in the plus column.
Definitely lived up to what they said they would do. Yeah, for sure. Like I said, at the Annapolis show years ago, he talked about the iPad. You run everything from the iPad, and it has a service record of everything you've done, and will notify you if something needs to be, you've gotten to your 150 hours on such and such, so you need to, arrange, or we can arrange for you to have a service guy to give it a thing, and by doing that, the after-sales price of this boat, if you ever try and sell it, will be high, because Xquisite has all the records, and you've worked together with them to make sure the boat has always been maintained to a high level, so you can sell the boat at a high price, right? As opposed to, again, if you buy a mass production boat, you're not going to get the hand holding. No. So they're leaving it up to you. If you don't do your service on your generator, or you didn't bother to do this because whatever, they don't have any record whether you did or didn't do it. Therefore, the next guy who wants to buy the boat probably just assumes that it didn't get done, right? Because there's no track record to show if it's ever been done. So anyways, that's good. So the after-sales service has been something we've talked about off camera, but we've both been super impressed with. Is there anything last minute to wrap this up? Is there anything else we didn't talk about that you think?
I guess I would say that after spending 4,000 miles on this boat with 4 people,
5 at one point.
And we didn't have calm conditions. We had real world, north of 25 knot wind conditions with big seas and many miles. At the risk of sounding like in somehow or other I'm on Tomas's payroll, I really think this is an extraordinary achievement in creating this yacht. Right. And I think that a person who is the right person who's looking for that sort of comfort side of the spectrum needs to take a serious look at this boat, because I think that they're going to be very, very happy as owners. Yeah. And I think Tomas and his crew have achieved something that's really unique in the boating world.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
I've been super impressed as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's great. I think we're going to wrap this episode up now because we've done probably an entire episode just you. I'll interview the rest of the crew on a different episode. He's leaving anyway, so we had to get this film today. You're leaving tomorrow, right?
Yeah, Wednesday. Yeah.
Wednesday, yeah.
2 days.
So this was our last chance to film his opinion, and I think his opinion is the most important opinion to a prospective
I think that too.
buyer.
I think my opinion is the most important.
It is more important than everybody else's because he has the most experience. So he can actually say, I know what it's like to sail a different type of cat for many years.
Yeah.
And you've got the experience that we don't. I mean, great. Of course, this blows my Beneteau out of the water, right? That goes without saying.
This blows a lot of boats out of the
so
water.
that's why it's hard for me to say this is an amazing boat because I have nothing to compare it to except for my chartering in a BVI on a much lesser boat than this. So of course this beats that one, but that doesn't say much. So there we go. So thank you, and it was a pleasure sailing across the Atlantic Ocean with you.
Likewise.
And that's it for now. Until next time, this is Craig signing off, wishing you safe cruising, and ciao for now. In the next episode, we'll be back to the sailing story where we're leaving Fernando de Noronha in Brazil and heading across the equator for the very first time to Grenada in the Caribbean. So hopefully you're looking forward to that. If you found this episode entertaining or informative, more likely informative in this case, give the channel some love by giving it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. Until next time, this is Craig signing off, wishing you safe cruising, and ciao for now. This is a boat bite. A big boat bite.
Hang on, let's salt the wound here.
Give me a pen. I'm gonna.